In a seemingly routine day, a plumber on site found himself in a nightmarish scenario. As he worked to snake a blocked drain, he began pulling back an unsettling mass, nearly 10 to 15 pounds of what appeared to be flesh. This quiet Ontario neighborhood in December 2017 was about to be shaken to its core. The plumbers had anticipated a simple job, but the grotesque nature of their discovery would turn a mundane task into a harrowing reality. Armed with their drain snake, a long wire tool designed to tackle such blockages, they expected to resolve the issue swiftly. Yet after several days of persistent clogs, tension began to rise among the neighbors who wanted a quick resolution. What the plumbers unearthed in the depths of the drain was far from a straightforward fix. Their gruesome find would soon draw the attention of law enforcement, transforming the neighborhood into a grim crime scene. The discovery of dismembered body parts, callously discarded down the toilet, set off a chain of events that would lead to the chilling tale of Adam Strong. At the heart of this grim narrative was Rory Guidon, a young woman whose life was overshadowed by circumstances beyond her control. Born in July 1999 in Oshawa, Ontario, Rory was an effervescent child with a love for animals and a deep compassion for the elderly. Her childhood was marked by achievements, including being named Cadet of the Year twice. However, as she transitioned into high school, her bright path began to darken, leading her into a world of addiction. At just 14 years old, she was introduced to crystal meth, a turning point that would ignite a long and arduous battle with substance abuse. Rory's upbringing was fraught with challenges, notably her connection to her grandfather, Bernie Guidon. Known infamously as Bernie the Frog, he was the notorious founder of the Satan's Choice Motorcycle Club. With a criminal history that included drug and assault charges, Bernie had spent over 2 decades behind bars, leaving a complex legacy for his family. Among his numerous children was Rory's uncle, Harley Davidson Guidon, a close figure in her life. A member of the Hells Angels, Harley had his own tumultuous history, marked by drug offenses and a notable prison record, yet he harbored a soft spot for his niece. In 2016, at the age of 17, Rory found herself living with Harley and his family, while he was under house arrest for drug charges. Her mother, Shannon Dion, had turned to the Children's Aid Society, believing it was the only way to help Rory combat her addiction. Regrettably, the intervention did not yield results. However, Rory demonstrated resilience, managing to reclaim her life in the subsequent months. The last half year of her life brought about positive changes. She found love in her boyfriend, Tony, and even secured her own apartment. Harley had provided financial support to both Rory and Shannon, contributing $1,000 to assist with living costs. Yet Rory was determined to forge her own path, returning to school and finding employment. In August 2017, her aunt Michelle Guidon accompanied her to a pharmacy for a pregnancy test that would change everything Rory was expecting. Elated, she envisioned her future as a mother, but fate had darker plans awaiting her at the end of that very month. In a moment that seemed to signal hope, Harley Davidson Guidon had generously offered his daughter Rory and her mother $1,000 to assist with their living expenses. Yet Rory had recently found her own footing. She secured a job and returned to school. The horizon appeared brighter for the young woman, but in August 2017, everything would change. Her aunt, Michelle Guidon, took Rory to a local drugstore where they purchased a pregnancy test. The result was a life-altering positive. Rory was pregnant. With aspirations of motherhood blossoming, her excitement was palpable. However, the joy would soon be overshadowed by impending darkness. As the summer days of 2017 passed, Rory embraced the news of her pregnancy with hope and anticipation. She envisioned the future as a mother and longed to welcome her child into the world. Little did she know that the end of that very month would mark the beginning of a harrowing journey. On August 10th, an unexplained fire erupted at the home of Shannon Dion, injuring her and claiming the life of her loyal dog. This tragic incident marked the beginning of a harrowing descent for her daughter, Rory Guidon. Rory, a familiar face at the local youth center known as the Refuge, began to unravel in the aftermath. Workers at the Refuge noticed a troubling shift in Rory's behavior. Although she had recently relapsed into drug use, by August, they observed a glimmer of hope, believing she was on the path to recovery. However, just days before the month closed, Harley Davidson Guidon met Rory and sensed an unsettling change. She was reluctant to divulge the turmoil brewing in her life. Rory seemed trapped, her demeanor cloaked in secrecy. Harley described the hug she gave him as gut-wrenching, a hug that felt like a final farewell, one he would never forget. This poignant encounter occurred on August 29, 2017, a date that would linger in their minds. Shortly thereafter, Rory's friend and her mother rushed her to the hospital, the exact reason shrouded in mystery. Witnesses later described Rory as having experienced a mental episode. CCTV footage caught the trio seated in the waiting room before Rory's friend and her mother were seen exiting the hospital, leaving Rory behind. After sitting alone in the waiting room for 15 minutes, Rory made the fateful decision to leave before being examined by a doctor. The footage captured her solitary exit from the hospital, marking the last sighting of Rory Guidon alive. As days passed without Rory showing up at the refuge, her friends and guidance counselor grew increasingly concerned. Joined by her family, they raised the alarm, fearing she may have left town and reverted to her old habits. Yet those closest to her held steadfast in their belief that she would not abandon her responsibilities. She was pregnant and in a stable relationship. Something was undeniably wrong. Then, on September 11, 2017, the situation took a horrifying turn. It was an otherwise peaceful evening at Oshawa Harbor when a grandfather and his 11-year-old grandson ventured out to fish. Standing on the pier, they noticed an unusual object floating in the water, initially mistaking it for a piece of trash. Determined to clean the lake, they cast their lines toward the suspicious object. After a grueling half-hour, they finally managed to reel it close enough to scoop it up with a net. As they pulled it onto the pier, one of them speculated it might be some sort of animal, perhaps a chicken, but the grim reality was about to unfold. In a chilling moment, the grandfather uttered the words that would haunt them forever. "I think that's a body." The item pulled from the depths of the lake was, in fact, a female torso. Upon the arrival of the police, it was determined that the remains bore signs of trauma and had been deliberately severed from the rest of the body. A woman had been murdered, her remains callously discarded. On a seemingly ordinary day, a group of anglers cast their lines into the serene waters of Lake Ontario. As they reeled in their catch, one of them noticed an unsettling shape beneath the surface. Initially mistaking it for an animal, perhaps a chicken, the anglers would soon confront a grim reality. The grandfather among them, with a growing sense of dread, uttered chilling words, "I think that's a body." Questions surged through the minds of the public, yet answers remained elusive. Who was this woman? What led to her brutal demise? And who was responsible for such a heinous act? The police quickly took charge, collecting the torso for identification while also considering any unresolved missing person cases. Lake Ontario sprawls vast and mysterious, complicating the investigation. Authorities could not dismiss the possibility that the torso had been transported to Oshawa from a distant location. The absence of the pelvis further complicated the identification process, leaving investigators with a daunting task ahead. As the investigation unfolded, a cloud of questions loomed over the scene, and answers were scarce. Who was this woman? What circumstances had led to her tragic end? The police collected the torso, intent on uncovering its identity. They would likely reach out to other services, looking into unresolved missing person cases that might offer clues. However, Lake Ontario's vastness posed a significant challenge for investigators. The police struggled to determine whether the torso had been transported from another location, perhaps even Oshawa. The absence of the pelvis complicated the identification process, leaving the investigators with more questions than answers as they delved deeper into the mystery surrounding this grim discovery. The condition of the severed torso presented a formidable challenge for investigators. It was difficult to ascertain whether the victim had been pregnant. It was not until November 10th, nearly 2 months later, that the police were able to compare the torso's DNA with samples supplied by Rory's family. The grim confirmation arrived. The dismembered torso belonged to Rory Guidon, and what had begun as a missing persons case had swiftly morphed into a murder investigation. The haunting questions lingered. How had her torso ended up in the lake? Who was responsible for her death? And, unsettlingly, where was the rest of her body? With no leads in sight, the lake had concealed any evidence that could illuminate the path leading to the perpetrator. Rory's final movements remained shrouded in mystery. The police were left with no idea how long she had been submerged, or how long she had been alive after leaving the hospital waiting room. Whom had she encountered? What had transpired? For the moment, the authorities were in the dark, while Rory's family sat in anxious anticipation for answers. Their wait would stretch until December 28, 2017, when a plumber in Oshawa would unwittingly uncover a grim revelation. The plumber had been called to address a persistent pipe blockage reported by a couple living in an upstairs rental apartment. For days, the issue had festered, and another resident of the building, Adam Strong, who resided in the basement suite, had been unable to resolve it. Despite his attempts to borrow a plumbing snake from the upstairs neighbor, Strong claimed the blockage was due to an inflated condom. Frustrated, the upstairs neighbors opted to call in professional plumbers to tackle the problem. As the plumbers approached Strong's door, they were met with a nauseating stench emanating from the basement suite. Strong appeared nervous, making comments about the foul state of the drains. As the plumbers began to snake the pipes, the discovery they made was beyond horrific. One plumber remarked, "I've never seen anything like it. Taking garbage out, everything is here, nice by the bed." It wasn't long before the police arrived on the scene. The officers suspected that the material being extracted from the pipes was human flesh. The plumbers were horrified at the implications of their find, realizing they had been in close proximity to Strong for hours. When the police knocked on his door, Strong opened it and, without hesitation, proclaimed, "The jig's up. It's a body." He was arrested on the spot. Even while seated in the squad car, he continued to engage with the officers. "I can tell you where the rest of her is," he said. "She's in my freezer and she's pretty defleshed." A sense of mounting dread filled the officers as they prepared to open the freezer. What they discovered inside was nothing short of macabre. Among the contents were severed body parts, including a human head, prominently tattooed with the word "alive," a tattoo that belonged to Rory Gwydden. Her autopsy later revealed multiple facial injuries and 2 fractures. The precise cause of death remained elusive. Toxicology tests indicated the presence of drugs, yet the quantity was indeterminate. Authorities speculated that she may have succumbed to strangulation or blunt force trauma. Whatever the circumstances, it was clear that she had endured a brutal attack. Strong addressed the officers. "If you're looking for the rest of her, you'll find her in the freezer." The question loomed. Was the person in that freezer Rory? "I decline to answer that question," he replied coolly. The interrogation stretched on for hours, and despite the relentless questioning, the police found themselves making little progress with Strong. Despite his earlier bravado, boasting of the human remains discovered on his property, Adam Strong's apartment became the next focus of the investigation. Inside, chaos reigned. Clutter and disarray filled the space. Investigators stumbled upon a disturbing collection of restraining devices and adult toys, casting a shadow over the already grim search. Amid the clutter, they uncovered weapons, including a hammer, alongside crucial evidence: Rory Gwydden's DNA. Notably, Rory's running shoes were discovered in a plastic bag, stained with what appeared to be blood. Blood spatter smeared the walls, painting a chilling picture of the events that had transpired within these walls. Yet the horrors did not stop there. The baseboards leading into Strong's bedroom revealed traces of other sinister acts. His online search history laid bare a morbid fascination with extreme gore and death, an obsession that had bled into reality in the most alarming manner. The investigation took a dangerous turn when they discovered an undetonated pipe bomb. The bomb squad was summoned to neutralize the threat. As the countdown reached 0, a deafening explosion shattered the silence of an Oshawa neighborhood, a stark reminder of the danger lurking in Strong's world. The controlled detonation of the suspicious package occurred amidst the backdrop of a death investigation unfolding under the watchful eyes of Durham Regional Police. Perhaps the most damning find was a specialty knife nestled among others in the drawer, a tool typically wielded by hunters to cut and skin animals. This very knife could have played a role in Rory's dismemberment. When the knife was tested, the results sent shockwaves through the investigation. It bore the DNA of another victim. This second victim was identified as 19-year-old Candace Fitzpatrick. Born in 1989, Candace shared eerie similarities with Rory. Like Rory, she had drifted through the streets of Oshawa, battling her own demons. Yet, Candace was not alone. She had a loving family who had tirelessly searched for her for nearly a decade. Since her disappearance in March 2008, her family had not given up hope. At just 18 years old, She had vanished from the Oshawa area, leaving her loved ones in despair. In 2010, her family reached out to the Durham Regional Police, expressing concerns about her absence since 2008. The anguish was palpable, as her loved ones grappled with the horrifying realization that a seasoned predator was on the loose. A family member recalled the rage that simmered within them, knowing that their tough daughter had encountered a skilled individual capable of such horror. They believed, with every fiber of their being, that Candace would not have been an easy target. Finally, a clue emerged regarding Candace's fate, but it was a grim revelation. The knife held her DNA, yet no trace of her body could be found. With this chilling evidence in hand, investigators turned their attention back to Strong. Initially, Strong fixated on Rory, exhibiting a cold detachment as he recounted the details of her death and dismemberment. He chillingly revealed that the gruesome act had commenced on Christmas Eve of 2017, a time when the neighbors were away, and he felt he could carry out his horrific plans undisturbed. The detectives pressed him further, probing his memories of that fateful night. "So, the 24th is when you started this, you said? Christmas Eve?" they inquired. "Yes," he replied, revealing the chilling practicality of his actions. "Were you doing this while it was frozen or partially defrosted?" they asked. "Completely defrosted," he answered. At this point, Strong had already been charged with committing an indignity to a dead body. He believed that focusing the conversation solely on the aftermath of Rory's death would shield him from further charges. However, as he continued to divulge details to the detectives, they found a way to push him closer to revealing more incriminating information. Each revelation opened doors to deeper implications, allowing investigators to infer the heinous acts he had committed while Rory was still alive. Despite the gravity of the situation, Strong refrained from confessing to the murders of either Rory or Candace. His chilling demeanor contrasted starkly with the weight of his words, leaving detectives to untangle the web of horror that surrounded him. In a chilling admission, Adam Strong revealed that he knew Rory Gwydden intimately. He confessed to sharing dinner with her on multiple occasions and shockingly disclosed that he dismembered her body after her tragic death. His surprise was palpable when he learned that her torso had been discovered in the lake, as he never expected it to float. Strong recounted the agonizing months that elapsed while he attempted to dispose of her body parts, labeling his procrastination as the reason behind it all. He also attributed his possession of a knife bearing Candace Fitzpatrick's DNA to his indecision, a feeble excuse for such heinous actions. Acknowledging that he should have discarded the knife, Strong realized that he could have evaded capture had he taken action sooner. He also confessed to knowing Candace, and it was this admission, coupled with the irrefutable DNA evidence, that ultimately led authorities to charge him with both murders. By November 2018, a year after Rory's remains were identified, prosecutors zeroed in on Strong as the primary suspect. Born in 1972, he was 45 years old when plumbers discovered Rory's torso, a finding that would unravel a dark chapter in the community. Strong worked as a gas station attendant and occasionally served as security on film sets. Details of his early life remain murky, though he claimed a troubled childhood, attributing his violent behavior to it. "These are my actions, but I don't think I would have made those actions," he stated, suggesting that with a different upbringing, his life could have taken a different path. He painted a vivid picture of his difficult upbringing and a history fraught with issues in his relationships with women. Prosecutors brought forth 2 former partners to testify about their unsettling experiences with Strong. Decades earlier, when Strong was in his 20s, the women recounted his disturbing preference for bondage and choking. For one, it was consensual, but the other described a terrifying encounter that left her fearing for her life. This troubling behavior painted him as an aggressive and cruel individual. In a desperate attempt to sway the jury, the defense suggested that perhaps the young women had overdosed, and Strong had panicked, discarding their bodies to avoid blame. However, the gruesome details surrounding Rory's head injuries told a different story. Strong's attempts to delay the trial were evident as the proceedings were hampered by the pandemic and conducted largely via video link. Yet there were moments when Strong refused to participate. "I was up all night," he complained, neglecting to meet with his lawyer for case discussions. "I'm tired. I want to go to bed." His arrogance did little to endear him to the court. On March 16, 2021, after numerous delays, The jury found Strong guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Rory Guidon and manslaughter in the death of Candace Fitzpatrick. Remarkably, this conviction was secured without Candace's body and without a direct confession to either murder. Nevertheless, Strong's admission of dismemberment was damning enough to warrant an automatic life sentence, a fate he seemed to resign himself to. In July 2021, while incarcerated, Strong revealed the location of Candace's remains to a prison guard. The police took him to an intersection in Oshawa, where he indicated the spot he believed he had buried her body. Authorities recovered Candace's remains, finally granting her family the closure they so desperately needed. "We're barely surviving a year and a half going through this. I couldn't imagine 10 years, a family member lamented. "You know, I've met that family in person. There's no way that they did not report that child missing. There's no way. They are good-hearted people. They're hurt. They're crushed." In the aftermath of the tragedy, the community was left reeling. Heartfelt sentiments echoed through the town as residents described themselves as good-hearted people, profoundly hurt and crushed by the violent events that unfolded so close to the police station. A longtime resident of Oshawa, who had spent 43 years in the town, expressed disbelief. Born and raised there, he never thought he would have to worry about such heinous crimes. He reflected on the past, acknowledging that while there had been bad people, none had come from the pit of hell, leaving him puzzled and disheartened. As he contemplated the situation, gratitude emerged amidst the sorrow. He felt blessed by the diligent work of the detectives and their superiors, though he struggled to comprehend the perpetrator's attitude toward the crimes. In the mind of Adam Strong, guilt was absent. He had, in his twisted perspective, already judged, tried, and convicted himself of being innocent. The resident found himself at a loss for words, unable to articulate his feelings toward Strong. Instead, he urged the man to consider doing the right thing for the city and for the families affected. The ripple effects of this tragedy were profound. The resident conveyed the devastation felt by his family and friends, declaring that they would never be the same again. He warned that a strong sentence for Strong would be particularly perilous due to Rory Guidon's family ties to notorious biker gangs. These connections included Bernie Guidon, the infamous founder of the Satan's Choice Motorcycle Club, suggesting that repercussions awaited Strong from those aligned with the leader's granddaughter. One convict chillingly remarked, "You can't kill the granddaughter of somebody connected to the Hells Angels." The reality was stark. Killing a biker's granddaughter could not go unpunished. Yet the circumstances surrounding how Strong encountered Candace and Rory remained shrouded in mystery, as did the motivations behind their murders. Prosecutors speculated these crimes were crimes of opportunity, suggesting that Strong may have kidnapped the women off the street. Disturbingly, he had yet to disclose the full truth. The unsettling decade-long gap between his first and second murders raised further questions about what horrors may have transpired in between. The audience was left to ponder the chilling implications of this narrative. How could Strong's crimes remain undetected for such an extended period? They were invited to share their thoughts in the comments, urged to stay safe until the next installment of the story unfolded. Viewers were encouraged to keep up with the channel, promising to return soon with more revelations on the decoder.